Hello, 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 and welcome back to this week's Peck Em Podcast. My name is Jonathan, and I will be your host for today. Joel is sitting this week out, but he will be back next week, and we should have a special guest next week as well. But welcome back, guys. Today we got a lot to talk about. A lot happened in the last week, and we are facing a pretty formidable opponent coming up for our home stretch that will be opening up against NAU, Northern Arizona University. But before we go into that, I just kind of want to do a little recap of last week, talk a little bit about Southern Illinois, what happened in that game, and kind of break down some of the things that we both kind of saw taking place in that game. So, again, that was a highly anticipated game. We were really excited about that game going into it, and I know that was something we had earmarked for a while, was against Southern Illinois as well as against South Dakota State. So those two games, these were two that we had on our map. For UIW, we deferred having any large FBS kind of money-making games this year. We decided to instead play two kind of FCS powerhouses, South Dakota State especially. We were very excited for South Dakota State, and obviously it didn't turn out the way we wanted it to, but we still had some really good practice in there, got a really good game in, and I think that we were pretty strong coming into SIU. And, you know, one of the things that we were worried about was how would that hurt our momentum? How would that hurt the loss to SDSU? How would that hurt maybe some of the morale of the team, something we were thinking about? And, you know, it was one of the things I really liked, and I said this in the last episode. We all kind of talked about this, me, Joel, and Morgan. We all talked about this, was that we liked the fight of this UIW team. We liked seeing their fight. We liked seeing them fight to the very end. We really liked the demeanor of Kilo, kind of firing up the team. Calzada stayed strong the whole game, kept trying to fight back. And this week almost felt like a continuation of that last week. So that's something that we had to talk about and look at when we kind of examine these stats and look at the game against Southern Illinois, because that game could have gotten out of hand. And at the half, I was kind of worried about it getting out of hand when we went into halftime. So we went into halftime down 35-14. Never a good thing to do. I could tell we were kind of frustrated as a team, and I was worried at that point. I was like, wow, this team is, you know, I feel like we're kind of losing our momentum here. And I didn't know if this was some of that SDSU hangover. I didn't know what was going on there. But, you know, and we had some obstacles we had to overcome. We had some injuries that we had to face as well and deal with as a team. But, you know, I was worried going into that half, and I was like, wow, you know, I hope that we're able to kind of pull it back together in that second half. And now we're facing a huge deficit, obviously. We went down 35-14. SIU scored 14 in the first quarter, followed by 21 in the second quarter. UIW scored a pair of touchdowns in the quarter one, and then or one touchdown in quarter one, and then another touchdown in quarter two. And so we went into that, right? And I was like, wow, well, you know, I hope we're able to pull it back in. And I think that when we came out at halftime, I was truly impressed with the defense. Defense stepped up, and we held SIU to 0 in the third quarter. That was huge for us, and I think it gave not only the defense a morale boost, but the offense as well. Because after that, we go into the fourth, and yeah, it would have been great to get some points on the board in that third quarter. But coming into the fourth, we go in, and the offense begins firing. We begin climbing back up. SIU didn't score any points in the whole second half, as a matter of fact. But UIW scored 14 points, and that was very close to the end of the fourth quarter. We got back in it. I think it was up to the last 3 minutes or so. We were really firing, getting everything going, and Calzada put on some amazing drives. And we'll go over the stats, and we'll talk about our Benson badasses for this week in a little bit. But we came back in it. We're there, 28-35. Right, and SIU defense stepped up, and they put it away. But, you know, this is one of those things where if we hadn't done that fourth quarter stand, I would have felt an entirely different way about this game. Because I really feel like we could have beat SIU. I think there were some things we had to work on in the first half on defense and on offense, because SIU kind of had their way with both rushing and passing. They had their way the whole time with us, and we were scoring. We were putting up some numbers, but it was nowhere close to what they were doing when they're, putting up 2 extra touchdowns to our 1 in the second quarter, and putting up 2 touchdowns to our 1 in the first quarter. It's hard to come out of that hole. So that's something that we kind of had to dig ourselves out of. And I think if the team that showed up in that fourth quarter had been present in the first and second and the third, I think it would be a different outcome. I really feel like we can go toe-to-toe with SIU, with even SDSU, and I think going into conference, I'm feeling a lot more kind of confident. I'm feeling more confident going into conference now. So, and obviously we have one more game. We have Northern Arizona. We'll talk about that team, and that's a team I don't want us to be taking lightly at all. This is a Big Sky team. I never count out Big Sky teams, and they are, I believe, 5th in the Big Sky. So this is, So this is a team that I think we're going to need to, look at, take seriously, and figure out their game plan, because they also aren't going to come into Benson and just lie down. We'll talk about them in a bit, but let's first kind of recap some of the numbers from last week. So for NAU, for UIW, we had Calzada, and he had another stellar game, 35-54. 366 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Again, great game from him, right? Interception, he's done a really good job at limiting those this season. And I was surprised to see the interception thrown. But, it happens. These things happen. And I really liked how we rallied the team in the fourth to kind of keep going and get back in this thing, especially not having scored in the third at all. And running backs as well. So DeKaylon Taylor had 8 carries, 32 yards, right? And this is one of the things that they were, kind of successful at was shutting down our run game. So we really had to kind of become one-dimensional here. We were passing the ball a lot, spreading the ball out a lot. Our receiving core did great. We had Roy Alexander, 10 receptions, 117 yards. He averaged about 11.6 per catch. Jalen Walthall, and this is the guy who we had last week as a Benson badass. 9 receptions, 104 yards, average 15.6. And then Josh Lorick, wide receiver, 5 receptions, 78 yards. So, these are all like good numbers to see being put up. I was very excited about our receiving core. I was excited about how Calzada was able to spread the ball around. That's, one of his strengths. But also, I feel like that's something that our team is really good at. We're good at finding spots, getting open. And I was surprised we weren't doing that as much in the first, second, and especially the third. But, the SIU defense was no joke. They came to play. And, I think it's one of these things where if we were able to get the rushing game going, it could have provided that two-dimensional offense, which really makes us and any team, for that matter, dangerous. So DJ Williams went 19 of 21 for 301 yards with an 11.1 average and 2 touchdowns. And so that's these are great stats to look at, right? 1 interception. So something to think about there, right? He also was really good at rushing the ball. 12 carries, 79 yards. And Zach Calzada was doing great in his own right, rushing the ball for us. 9 carries, 30 yards. And Zach Calzada is really a dual threat quarterback for that as well. So I was really happy with how he played and kind of how he managed that and brought that dual threat element himself a little. Kind of kept the defense on their toes. But yeah, and then looking over at SIU, DJ Williams again, 79 yards, 12 carries, like I said. Keontae Lewis busting loose for a 57-yard run also. And then, our defense had a hard time stopping their passing in the first half. And, we just they had their way with us in that first half. Second half, we really locked up defensive-wise. and that's one of the reasons that we were able to climb back in it. The defense held them scoreless, and I think the offense really got fired up and got going, and I was very impressed with that, as I've said. But yeah, so kind of going to our Benson badasses for last week, and let's go ahead and put them out there. So mine is the receiving core. They all put up some crazy numbers, which helped chip the lead down in the late in the fourth, and like I said, Calzada spread the ball around very well. Receivers got open, and we were able to make plays and score when we had to, particularly at the very end. Like, we were able to come back in it. I wish we had some more time, but we were able to get that going, and I think that momentum is going to carry us into this next one. So for Joel, he said defense. His Benson badasses is the entire defense. They held their own against a really good team with just a fourth quarter slip up, right? And it's just at the very end, defense held in there, and SIU finally kind of began chipping away and getting back in the game in the fourth quarter. And it wasn't really a slip up either. I mean, they've been holding their own the entire half, so they did really good. And I think it's one of those things where the offense began going in the fourth. That was great. Maybe a little too late, right? But it's one of those things where I really feel like once they got going, they got in their groove, they got in their rhythm. And I liked seeing that hurry-up offense. I like seeing the fire lit under them. But yeah, so my Benson badasses for the week are the entire receiving core. Joel's Benson badasses for the week are the entire defense. They did great, and they really showed out in the second half and shut down SIU, held the Saluki scoreless in the second half, and that is no small feat. So going into this next game against NAU, we are going to need to take this team seriously. They are fifth in the Big Sky Conference. They only lost to number 20 Arizona, FBS Arizona, 22-10. Which if you look at that number, okay, that may seem like a little bit lopsided there, but they led Arizona 10-6 at the half, and then they didn't score any points at all in the second half, and so Arizona ended up coming back in and just having their way with them there. But Ty Pennington, the quarterback, we should take him seriously. So I was looking at some of the numbers here from, again, when they played Arizona, because that's a pretty good stat to put up, all those points and yards against a ranked FBS opponent, Power 5 opponent too. So Ty Pennington in that Arizona game went 14 of 24 for 84 yards. Seth Cromwell, running back, 11 carries, 41 yards. Xander Warner, 1 reception, 25 yards, 1 touchdown. And, looking at these stats, they aren't like the most impressive stats, but they're able to keep them in there. And it also does kind of speak especially to the defense for NAU kind of shutting down Arizona in that first half. So I really hope the defense that showed up in the second half shows up on Saturday at Benson. But they put up 198 yards against a very good Arizona team. So, and then now Arizona did lead the time of possession 32-37 to 27-23. And so, Arizona managed the clock well at home and ended up coming back to get back in the game and secure a pretty solid victory. But this is not really a loss for NAU, and I think going toe-to-toe with the Power 5 opponent did a lot to boost the confidence of that team. And, there's something to be said for that. There's something to be said for going into a FBS team's house and standing toe-to-toe with them for the entire game and just going back and forth with them. And if you're able to do that, that can give you a lot of confidence as a FCS team. And I think it did for this team, because after that, they then kept winning. And so this leads up to last week's game for them against Utah Tech, who is from the UAC, right, where Abilene Christian is in. And they ended up beating Utah Tech 45-17. And they put up 554 yards to Utah Tech's 286. They managed the clock very well, and this was at home. Ty Pennington, The quarterback, of course, 8 of 14 for 123 yards and 2 touchdowns. Darvin Hubbard, 14 carries for 130 yards and 1 touchdown. And Tyre Brooks, wide receiver, 2 receptions for 76 yards and 2 touchdowns. So they were pretty balanced. They were able to get rushing and passing going, and that made them very dangerous. And they ended up defeating Utah Tech by a pretty wide margin. And this is one I was kind of following, as the day went on and as our game went on. So very interesting game there as well. So I would not take NAU lightly. I know it's the home opener, and we're not in conference yet, but I think if we can come out and shut down this NAU team at home, at Benson, I think that's going to go a long way for our program, for the confidence of the team, and also for the fans too, right? And, we're in a little bit of a drought right now. We are 1-2, not fun to look at. We're still ranked, which is great, right? We're still ranked. And, as we should be. I think we've been showing out and putting up some really good numbers and fighting till the very end against 2 highly ranked teams we faced back-to-back on the road. So that's something to think about, right? And so I think going into this and going into this game, one of the keys is going to be to open up that two-dimensional offense, get our rushing going, get our passing going, spread the ball around. And, this is something that Joel and I were talking about earlier before the podcast here. And so one of the things we did was we got our picks, right? So Joel's pick was UIW 48-17 over NAU. And we're going to let out some frustration. We're going to come into this game hungry for a win, hungry to win at home especially, and let out some frustration against this Northern Arizona team, who can't be taken lightly, but I think we're going to come in with the fire lit under us, hungry for a win, and kind of feeling like we're starving right now. We're going to go in there. I think we're going to win. And so Joel called a pretty big win, 48-17. I'm going to say 48-38 UIW over NAU. I agree. We're going to come in there hungry. We're going to be firing. We can't take this team lightly. And they've also been able to move around the ball very well. They're pretty aggressive. I've seen them run a lot of trick plays, especially against Arizona. And so I think if they do that, and they're coming into Benson not looking to lose. Obviously, no team ever comes in here looking to lose. But they are coming here, and this is a team that stood up against Arizona in an FBS level. Wasn't scared at all. So I think they're going to come in here very confident, trying to get that win. They're trying to prove something as well. So I think they'll put up some points against us, 48-38. But I don't think they're going to be able to pull the win out. I think we're going to lock them down. I think our defense is going to show up. I think Calzada is going to spread the ball around. I think our rushing game is going to get going. DeKalon Taylor is going to get on his game, Isaiah Robinson. And I think we're going to be back in business here. So I'm looking to come out of this. We're both looking to come out of this with a win. I know our predictions have been wrong for the last 2 games, but we're not going to pick the other team in this one. This is a UIW podcast. All right, so the Peck Em Podcast. And so, anyway, we're both picking UIW to win, and we think that's going to happen for sure. And we're pretty excited to see Benson this week and see our guys back at home. Now, we also do have some picks over here for our games of the week. So, games of the week, we have Eastern Washington versus FBS Nevada. And this is a 2 p.m. kickoff Saturday. Joel and I both picked Nevada on this against Eastern Washington. And I think it's going to be a cool game for Eastern Washington to come out, try to prove something. And, we've seen Nevada fall before, but I also have seen them kind of stand their ground as well. So I think that, Nevada's going to stand their ground and be able to get this win. And then we have Houston Christian versus UTSA, another game at home in San Antonio, so 2:30 p.m. kickoff. And Joel and I both pick UTSA for this one. We have Texas Southern versus Lamar. Joel's picking Texas Southern in this one. I'm picking Lamar in this one. And this is a 6 p.m. kickoff on Saturday. Northern Colorado, who we faced before, versus SFA. Joel and I both picked our now Southland brethren, SFA, at 7 p.m. kickoff on Saturday. And then Alcorn State versus McNeese State. We both end up picking McNeese State against 7 p.m. kickoff on Saturday. So that's what we got, guys. We got a few cool games coming up this week. We got some Benson badasses as well. And we're both looking forward to being back at the nest and seeing what happens this week. But either way, we're looking forward to the Cardinals, showing up on the game, having a good time, and getting back in Benson. But yeah, so that is our show for this week. A little bit shorter than usual. Next week we'll have a special guest, and of course we'll be back in here with Joel. But until then, have a great week, everyone. Let us go out there and let's beat NAU. And until next time, Peck 'em.